Well, 177 of Jeffrey Epstein's associates will be named in court documents set to be unsealed at the first of the year. So this is really interesting. We've been waiting. We've been waiting for names to drop, and it turns out January 1st is when they're scheduled, which means probably won't be until January 2nd because the 1st is actually a holiday. But first of the year, we're getting a batch of names. Now, these names are not just perps, right? These aren't just the guys, but this is also going to be, this is including victims. This is including, so there's friends, recruiters, and victims who have been named in court documents. And we're now going to be getting the list of names. Now, there are a few people that are going to be able to get their names redacted. These would be victims. And the reason why they'd be able to get those redacted is because of, maybe they were minors at the time or they have some reason, but only the victims are going to be able to actually appeal to the court to have their name redacted, which is why they're waiting until the first of the year. But 177, they say that this is related to a lawsuit that was brought out by Virginia Roberts Giuffre, if you remember her. She actually sued Ghislaine Maxwell, which was Epstein's madam, and she did win that lawsuit, but then later sued again because they were able to conceal the names of the names that she put in those documents, what she was talking about in her case. And so she sued again to have all of those released to the public, and the judge ultimately decided that it was fine to release these names, that nobody would be harmed in this really. So the judge ruled that the names could come out. So now we're going to be getting some of the names. Now, if we remember, there were some names we already know. So I don't know how many more names. We'll kind of wait and see over the next couple of weeks. 177 names are going to be dropped. So of those, there might be some bombshell names. There might be some names we already know. Some of the names we do know. This is a guide to his famous friends and acquaintances by the Intelligencer. Put this out. So they kind of categorized all the different people. If you remember, Prince Andrew's a big one. That's also who Virginia Giuffre, she sued Prince Andrew. She's been in a number of lawsuits at this point. But Prince Andrew is one of them. There was also the governor, Bill Richardson of New Mexico. He's recently passed away. But he was also named Alan Dershowitz. Now, Alan says that he didn't do anything wrong. That's what he claims. He didn't do anything wrong, and he wants all of the information to come out because it'll prove that he didn't do anything wrong. Bill Clinton was also one of the names that we've known about. Flight logs show that he took at least 26 trips on the Lolita Express, apparently ditching his Secret Service detail for at least 5 of those flights. So RFK Jr. has also admitted to flying on the Lolita Express twice. Les Wexner, he is the guy behind Victoria's Secret. He is obviously very associated with Epstein. Apparently, Epstein was worked for Les Wexner exclusively and somehow made like $1 billion doing that. Donald Trump has been also associated with Epstein. They were said to be friends. But he said, and he even mentioned something about Jeffrey Epstein liking beautiful women, a lot of them very young. There were reports, though, that Trump wasn't really, he was friendly with him and that they lived in the same neighborhood in Florida, that Epstein was a member of his club, but that he ultimately got kicked out. Bill Gates was also friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He said he was not involved in anything, that he was just friends with him. But a new article just dropped by the Wall Street Journal. They did a big investigative piece just the other day, like 2 days ago. They released this. Jeffrey Epstein never stopped abusing women, and his VIP circle helped make it possible. A Wall Street Journal investigation shows Epstein continued ensnaring young women for abuse after his 2008 conviction. This is their story of what happened. So they have a big, long story that they just put out there a few days ago. And in it are new pictures, one of them of Bill Gates right there. You can see him. They've covered up the face of the woman to protect her, but she is a Polish model, a young Polish model, not underage, but a young Polish model. And she does give her story to the Wall Street Journal. I want to read a little bit of this story to you because it's kind of pertinent to what we're talking about with the names dropping, because we want names. We want names. So it says the journal's investigation shows that Epstein's sexual exploitation and abuse didn't end with his 2008 conviction, as many of his famous associates later said they believed, but continued until his second arrest in 2019. He lured dozens of women by promising to use his connections to powerful people to get them jobs or other opportunities. He then groomed most of the women for his personal sexual exploitation and passed a select group to other men for sex. Epstein told some of the women that he could get them into Woody Allen's films or secure them a job at the United Nations. So these are the connections he has, right? We're getting these connections. Clearly connected to Woody Allen, clearly connected to people at the United Nations. He promised others that he could get them into get modeling gigs at Victoria's Secret. So that'd be Les Wexner. He told the Polish model he could help her get involved at the Gates Foundation. He conjured up many such offers for women. So that's why the Polish woman is standing next to Bill Gates. Quote, without having legitimate connections to so many high-powered people, Jeffrey Epstein would not have been able to traffic most of these women after 2008, said lawyer Brad Edwards, along with his firm partner, Brittany Henderson. He represents the Polish model and more than 150 of Epstein's accusers. Quote, these are smart women who would have not believed him otherwise. Now, under federal law, sex trafficking of adults involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel sex acts in exchange for money or favors. The law doesn't require movement across a border, and the coercion can be psychological. When the victims are minors, the law doesn't require proof of fraud or coercion. So that's important. A lot of people believe, how can an adult who is of consenting age be sexually trafficked? Most sex trafficking is of adults. And that is when people are forced or there's fraud. For example, you can't hire somebody under fraudulent pretenses. You can't say, I got a job for you. And then you offer them a particular salary, or you offer them, for example, promotions, right? You offer them all these things. And really the only thing you're wanting out of them is sex. That you can't do that. And that is, sex trafficking is similar to that. It involves a bit more, but it's that fraud, it's that coercion, it's that, or force, like making a person feel like, well, you'll have nowhere else to go. So there is a bit more to it than just a consenting adult in a bad relationship. It goes further than that in a fraudulent manner. Edwards' clients have sued Epstein's estate and financial institutions that provided banking services to him. Edwards said that most of the women were sexually abused and exploited by Epstein himself, but that he also groomed some for certain of his friends. He said a total of more than 20 men have been named as participants in sexual exploitation or abuse by women who were trafficked by Epstein, but he declined to name the men, citing client confidentiality. We want names. We want names. We want names. We want names. And you know why we want names? The real reason why we want names. Now, a lot of people might want the names because they just want to point at people and say, oh, you're a sicko, you're a pedophile, or you're some kind of a weird John or something like that, right? But really what's so important about this is clearly Jeffrey Epstein was operating a blackmail campaign. Whether he was doing it, many of us believe, for Mossad because of his connections to Ghislaine Maxwell, and her father was Mossad. So there's a lot of thinking that he did it for Mossad. However, he may have done this for other intelligence agencies. He might have contracted his blackmail services to the CIA, to Mossad, to MI6, like whoever, right? We want to know who these names are so that we can start tracing decisions that have been made for the people, supposedly, that weren't really for the people, but they were to cover up for some blackmail, for influence. We want to know who has been influenced because they did some dirty and Jeffrey Epstein caught them on tape. And we want to know what decisions they made because of that. That is what's more important than anything. Okay, so what? If if they deserve jail time because they're sickos, fine. But what we really want to know is what decisions did they make that have had serious outcomes for the American people, for the Israeli people, for the British people, whoever it might be. We want to know. We want to know exactly the extent and the depth of those blackmail campaigns. Now, I'm sure a lot of the people who are involved that might know about this are feeling pretty safe. Maybe some of them feel nervous, but I'm sure some of them feel really safe, thinking, well, I know for a fact Jeffrey Epstein doesn't have the files on me because I got protected. They swooped in, whoever's doing the blackmail, because now I'm getting blackmailed by somebody else from that same department of blackmail. Now they've got my file. Jeffrey doesn't have it anymore. Epstein doesn't have it anymore. And now I'm being blackmailed by his predecessor. Who knows? But we want to know. That is what we really want to know. That is what's really important, because it is really important to know what wars did we get into, what decisions have been made, what contracts have been had, what prizes have been given out. There was Bill Gates reportedly wanted to win it. He wanted Epstein to help him get a Nobel Prize. So somehow Epstein was connected to the Nobel people and maybe had some ins there, and Bill Gates could get in with Jeffrey Epstein that would help him somehow get a Nobel Prize. I mean, this guy was so deeply connected. We just want to know who he was connected to and what did they get out of that. That is what we want to know. So but we'll know a little bit more January 1st. So I guess a little bit out of time, but hopefully we do get the true extent of his operations and the people involved in those operations. Hopefully we get all that information sooner than later at some point.